The scent of expensive lilies was suddenly replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of gunpowder. I stood at the altar, my hand trembling in David's. We were seconds away from I do. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass of the cathedral felt like a blessing until the massive oak doors didn't just open, they exploded inward. Silence didn't follow. A heavy, rhythmic thud of combat boots drowned out the wedding march. I looked up, expecting a mistake, a prank, anything but the reality staring back at me. 50 men in charcoal gray suits flooded the aisles, moving with a terrifying, synchronized precision. At the center of the formation stood a man who looked like he'd been carved out of granite and cold silk. Kang Han-eol, the undisputed Shadow King of the Seoul underworld. A man whose name was whispered in fear from the docks of Busan to the penthouses of Gangnam. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to know I existed. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the armed guards David's family had hired. He looked only at me. The ceremony is over. Han-eol's voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. He stepped onto the altar, his eyes trailing down my white lace dress as if it were an insult. David stepped forward, his face pale. Who the hell are you? This is a private. Before David could finish, a hand like a vice gripped his throat, not Han-eol's hand but his second in command. Han-eol simply adjusted his cufflinks, his gaze never leaving mine. Step away from my wife, Han-eol said. The room froze, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I don't know you, I managed to whisper. Han-eol leaned in close, the scent of sandalwood and expensive tobacco clouding my senses. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a terrifying tenderness. You don't remember, Minna? He murmured, his eyes darkening. But the blood on the contract says otherwise. You aren't marrying a businessman today, you're coming home to the Dragon Syndicate. Then he turned to his men and uttered 4 words that would dismantle my life. Don't touch our wife. Why does this matter? Because in the world of the South Korean elite, a debt isn't just money, it's a blood oath. My father was a man of prestige, or so the world thought. A CEO of a logistics firm, but beneath the polished exterior was a gambling addiction that had hollowed out our family's soul. He didn't just lose the house, he didn't just lose the company. He lost a game of high-stakes poker in a basement that doesn't exist on any map. And the man across the table, he didn't want the deed to a failing shipping line, he wanted a legacy. If I stayed in that cathedral, David would die. If I left with Han-eol, I would become a ghost, a possession of the most dangerous man in Asia. I looked at David, kind, stable, safe David, then I looked at the sea of black suits. Every guest was frozen. The security we hired, they had their foreheads pressed against the marble floor. They knew who this was. Choose Minna, Han-eol said, offering a gloved hand. The coward who hides behind a veil, or the man who will burn this city down to keep you. The transition was violent. There was no leaving the wedding, it was an extraction. I was swept off the altar, the train of my Vera Wang gown tearing against the pews. David screamed my name, but a heavy boot to his chest silenced him. Please, I cried out, kicking against the grip of the men carrying me. You can't do this, this is kidnapping. This is repossession, Han-eol corrected. I was thrown into the back of a blacked-out armored SUV. The door slammed, sealing out the screams of my wedding guests. Inside, the air was cold. Han-eol sat across from me, pouring a glass of 30-year-old whiskey as if we were simply heading to dinner. You're going to want to breathe, he said, not looking up. The adrenaline will make you faint, and I'd prefer you awake when we cross the border into the estate. My father, what did he do? Han-eol finally looked at me. His eyes weren't just cold, they were predatory. Your father sold your hand to settle a debt of 40 billion won, but he tried to double-cross me. He tried to marry you off to the son of a prosecutor to buy himself immunity. He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. In my world, Minna, there is no immunity, there is only ownership. As the car speeds away, a massive explosion rocks the cathedral behind them. Did Han-eol just destroy the evidence, or was it someone else? The estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress tucked into the mountainside of Pyeongchang. High walls topped with rhythmic laser sensors, guards with submachine guns patrolling the perimeter like wolves. I was led into a bedroom that looked like a museum. Silk sheets, hand-carved mahogany, and a window that overlooked a sheer cliff. "You will stay here," Han-eol stated. "You will be fed, you will be clothed, but you will not attempt to leave." "And if I do?" He paused at the door, his silhouette cutting a terrifying figure against the hallway light. "Then the man you were supposed to marry will find himself in a concrete suit at the bottom of the Han River." For the next 3 days I was a prisoner in paradise. Every time I tried to speak to a maid, they lowered their heads and scurried away. The boss's lady was a title that carried a curse. But then the rhythm changed. On the fourth night, the silence was shattered by the sound of glass breaking downstairs. Not a wedding crash this time, an infiltration. I pressed my ear to the door, shouting, the rhythmic thwip-thwip of suppressed gunfire. The door to my room burst open. It wasn't Han-eol. It was a man I didn't recognize, scarred, wearing a rival syndicate's colors. "So this is the prize," he sneered, lunging for me. I scrambled back, grabbing a heavy crystal vase from the nightstand. I swung with everything I had. It shattered against his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He pinned me to the bed, a knife flashing in the moonlight. "Han-eol thinks he can keep the golden bride for himself. We'll see how much he wants you when you're—" The man's head suddenly snapped back. A single red dot danced on his forehead. Crack! Blood sprayed across my white nightgown as the man collapsed. Han-eol stood in the doorway, a smoking pistol in his hand. His shirt was unbuttoned, his chest covered in a sprawling dragon tattoo that seemed to writhe in the dim light. He looked possessed. He didn't check the body. He walked straight to me, his hands shaking, the first sign of emotion I'd seen. "I told them," he hissed, his voice vibrating with a primal rage. "I told them if they touched you, I would salt the earth they stand on." He pulled me into him. It wasn't a hug, it was a claim. "Are you hurt?" "Why do they call me the Golden Bride?" I choked out, pushing against his chest. "What is this really about?" Han-eol sat me down. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving a cold, hollow terror. "Your father didn't just owe me money," he began, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "He stole something, a ledger, a record of every transaction, every bribe, every body buried by the 7 families of Korea." He paced the room like a caged tiger. "The other families think you know where it is. They think your father gave it to you as a dowry. That wedding, it was a beacon. You were a target the second you stepped into that church." "I don't have it," I screamed. "I don't know anything about a ledger." "I know," Han-eol said, stopping in front of me. "But as long as the world thinks I'm the only one who has claimed you, they won't kill you. They'll wait. They'll try to negotiate with me." He knelt down. "Eye level with me. I didn't crash your wedding to ruin your life, Minna. I crashed it to save it. But in doing so, I've started a war that only one of us will survive." A phone on the nightstand buzzes. It's a video message. It shows David, tied to a chair with a countdown timer ticking on a bomb strapped to his chest. The video played in a loop. David's eyes were wide with terror, his mouth was taped shut. The message accompanying the video was simple: the ledger for the groom, 12 hours. I looked at Han-eol. "We have to save him." "There is no ledger," Han-eol said coldly. "If I go there empty-handed, we both die. David is already a dead man walking." "You did this," I screamed, lunging at him. "You pulled me into this world. If you're as powerful as you say, save him." Han-eol caught my wrists. His grip was firm, but he didn't hurt me. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Was it pity or something darker? "You want to save the man who was going to marry you for your father's connections? Fine," Han-eol growled. "But we do it my way. We went to the lion's den, and you have to play the part." "What part?" "The bride of the dragon. You have to convince them that you love me, that you are part of the syndicate now. If they see even a flicker of doubt, they will kill us all." The meeting took place in an abandoned shipyard. The wind howled through the rusted skeletons of old freighters. Han-eol walked in with only 4 men. I was at his side, dressed in black silk, my hand tucked into the crook of his arm. My skin crawled, but I held my head high. Across the clearing stood the heads of the other families, old men with cold eyes and younger men with hungry ones, and in the center, David. He looked broken, When he saw me, hope flared in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by confusion as he saw me clinging to Han-eol. "The ledger, Han-eol," the eldest boss said. "Give us the book and the boy lives." Han-eol smiled. It was a terrifying, mirthless expression. "The book is safe, but I've decided the boy is a nuisance. He's seen too much." "Han-eol, no," I whispered, playing my part, but the fear was real. "Be silent, wife," Han-eol snapped, his voice booming. He looked at the other bosses. "I'll give you something better than the ledger. I'll give you a partnership, but first, I want to see if this boy is worth the trouble." He pulled a knife from his belt and tossed it at David's feet. "Pick it up," Han-eol commanded David. "If you can draw even a single drop of my blood, I'll let her go with you." The bosses laughed. It was a game to them. David looked at the knife. He looked at me. His hands shook. He reached for it, his fingers brushing the handle, and then he stopped. He looked at the guards, the guns, the sheer power of the men surrounding him. He let out a sob and curled into a ball. "Just let me go," he whimpered. "I don't want her, just let me go." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. This was the man I was going to spend my life with. Han-eol looked down at David with pure disgust, then he looked at me. "Is this your hero, Mina?" Before I could answer, the eldest boss stepped forward. "Enough games. If there is no ledger, there is no deal. Kill them all." As the guards raise their weapons, Han-eol doesn't reach for his gun. He reaches for a remote in his pocket. "Did you really think I'd come here without insurance?" The shipyard erupted. Han-eol hadn't just brought men, he had rigged the containers. Flashbangs detonated, blinding the rival guards. In the chaos, Han-eol moved like a shadow. Pub pub pub. He moved with a terrifying economy of motion, dropping 3 men before they could even aim. He grabbed my waist, shielding me with his own body as bullets pinged off the metal crates behind us. "Run," he shouted, shoving me toward the SUV. "David," I screamed. I looked back. David was running too, but not toward me. He was running toward the exit, tripping over his own feet, leaving me behind without a second glance. Han-eol saw it. He didn't say a word. He just laid down a wall of cover fire until we reached the car. As we tore away from the shipyard, the night air filled with the sound of sirens and fire. I sat in the backseat breathing hard. The image of David's retreating back burned into my mind. "He left me," I whispered. "He's a civilian," Han-eol said, his voice unusually soft. He was bleeding from a graze on his shoulder. "He wasn't built for this world. He did the only thing he knew how to do, survive." "And you," I looked at him. "The man who had kidnapped me, lied to me, and put me in the line of fire. Why did you stay for me?" Han-eol leaned back, his eyes closing for a moment. "Because 10 years ago, a little girl gave a starving street kid her lunch in a park in Incheon. She told him that even if the world was cold, he didn't have to be." I froze. The memory hit me like a physical blow. A small boy by the swing sets, bruised, alone. "You." "I spent 10 years becoming the man who could protect that girl," he said, opening his eyes. They were no longer cold. They were filled with a desperate, ancient longing. "I didn't crash your wedding to claim a prize, Mina. I crashed it because I am the only shield you have left." The story of the Golden Bride wasn't a story of a kidnapping. It was a story of a debt that went both ways. My father had used me as a pawn. David had used me as a trophy. But Han-eol, he had built an empire just to ensure he could stand between me and the dark. As we arrived back at the estate, the sun was beginning to rise over the mountains. "The world feels different now." The lace of my wedding dress was stained with oil and blood. "What happens now?" I asked. Han-eol stood by the window looking out at his kingdom. "Now the war truly begins. The other families won't stop. They know you're my weakness now. They won't go after the ledger, they'll go after your heart." He turned to me holding out a small, leather-bound book, the ledger. "You had it the whole time," I whispered. "No," he said. "I found it in your father's safe house an hour before the wedding. I could have used this to destroy everyone and walk away. I could have left you at that altar." "Then why didn't you?" He walked over to me, his presence overwhelming. He took my hand, the one that still wore David's engagement ring, and slowly slid the diamond off, dropping it onto the floor. "Because a ledger can be replaced," he whispered, "but there is only one of you." He leaned in, his lips inches from mine. For the first time, I didn't pull away. The line between captor and savior had blurred into nothingness. But then, a frantic banging came from the front gates. The security monitors in the room flickered to life. A fleet of black sedans was tearing through the perimeter, not rival gangs. Interpol. And leading them, with a bandage on his head and a look of cold, calculating betrayal, was David. He's not a civilian, Han-eol cursed, reaching for his tactical gear. He's an undercover agent. He wasn't marrying you for your father's connections, he was marrying you to get to me. My world shattered for the second time in 24 hours. The man I loved was the enemy. The man I feared was my protector. Minna, David's voice boomed over a megaphone outside. Step away from him, we know he has you, come to us and you'll be safe. Han-eol looked at me, a bitter smile on his face. He handed me a pistol. This is it, Minna, the moment of truth. If you go to him, I will go to prison for life. If you stay with me, you're a fugitive for the rest of yours. He stepped back, leaving the door wide open. Who do you trust, the man who lied to you with a smile, or the man who told you the truth with a gun? I looked at the gun in my hand. I looked at the monitors. David was smiling, a cold, triumphant smile that I'd never seen before. I walked toward the window. I looked down at the courtyard where 100 guns were pointed at the heart of the dragon. Then I turned back to Han-eol. You said don't touch our wife, I whispered. I raised the gun, but I didn't point it at Han-eol. I pointed it at the monitor showing David's face. Let's show them why they should have stayed away. If you were in Minna's shoes, would you trust the undercover agent who promised safety or the Mafia boss who risked everything to save you? David left her to die at the shipyard, but Han-eol is a criminal. Who is the real villain here? Let me know in the comments. The most intense theory gets pinned.